Senator Cornyn, thank you for taking a few minutes.
You bet.
Thank you for a good excuse to be in your home state. I wanted to start, however, with some news of the day or news overnight, in part because the president mentioned that on his way to Texas on Friday, you were on Air Force One with him, and he was talking to you and Senator Cruz about Iran and the others on the plane. Give us a sense of where his head was at then, and did he give you any indication this is where things were headed?
I think he was still going through his own decision-making process. And as you know, this has been going on for a while, given the complexity of the plans and the buildup. And I think he was just trying to sort of see where we were on it. And I would say that both of us were supportive of the president's decision to make the strike. It takes a lot of political courage because, you know, these things are easier to start than they are to end. But I appreciate his commitment to Iran never getting a nuclear weapon. That would be an unmitigated disaster. That would change everything in the Middle East. And this is the #1 state sponsor of international terrorism. So I support the president's strike. But he was, I think, it's what he tends to do, whether it's on the telephone or in person, is say, you know, what do you think? And that's what he did.
And what did you tell him when he asked?
I told him I supported a strike. Because, first of all, I told him I really respected the fact he would take the chance, the political risk, really, to strike Iran's nuclear weapons program. And the fact that, you know, these B-2s flew from Missouri 30 hours and then dropped these bunker busters down the ventilation shaft of a nuclear weapons program is nothing short of miraculous. I mean, to me, it makes me proud as an American that the United States military is capable of doing that. But you know, the president likes to talk these things through privately, and so that was really the conversation.
You're on the Foreign Relations Committee
I am.
And the Intelligence Committee.
I am.
If this results in the Ayatollah being killed, what does that do to Iran? What does that do to the region?
That's a $64,000 question. The president has made the point that this is an opportunity, the first the Iranian people have had since 1979, to take control of their own country. This is a terrible, repressive regime, and obviously they care nothing about their own people. The fact is somewhere around 30,000 of them have been killed in recent weeks. The president told the regime to stop, and clearly they did not. But that's who they are, and that's how they maintain power. So nobody knows, I don't know at least, how long this is going to go on, but I do think this is the golden opportunity for the Iranian people, and I think we ought to look for ways that we can continue to support them in their pursuit of self-determination.
You say you don't know how long it's going to go on. There have been some this morning who said it could be weeks, not days. Did that come up in the conversations with the president?
No,
Okay.
no.
You were elected to the Senate 24 years ago, later this year.
Mm-hmm.
There has not been an authorized use of military force voted on as long as you've been in the Senate.
That's right.
The two were voted on the
Was
2
it
years before.
91? It was like
91, and then there was the 2001,
Yep,
and then there was
that's
the
right.
2002. So right before you got there.
That's right.
You know that you have colleagues clamoring for a new one.
Yep.
Does this not hasten that necessity, or to at least have a debate over redefining it, passing a new one potentially?
I think we'll certainly have that debate, and you know, there was reasons why the president had to keep plans for this particular strike quiet, because if it leaked out, obviously that would mean that they wouldn't have the opportunity to eliminate a large portion of the leadership of the regime. So I expect to have those debates. I know a number of my Senate colleagues are going to propose a war power resolution. But this is really a debate that's gone on since the beginning of the country. Different presidents have felt like they had all the authority they needed under Article 2 of the Constitution, which defines the power of the presidency. Members of Congress have felt like, well, we want to be consulted, and but then the War Powers Resolution, I can't remember whether it was in the Nixon administration or the Eisenhower administration, basically was vetoed. And I just think those debates are always going to continue. Congress does maintain the ultimate power of the purse, But again, I don't know how many members of Congress are willing to cut off funding if American interests and American troops are potentially in harm's way.
Yeah. So we'll see where that debate goes. You know, we've done years of polling. We've talked to voters over the last several weeks. While the president has been so focused on foreign affairs, of course, they tell us they're mostly concerned about the cost of things and inflation.
That's not surprising.
Does this not potentially distract him and therefore Congress from focusing on that concern?
Well, I was in Corpus Christi yesterday, the day before the strike, and that's what we were talking about. Our energy dominance. Secretary Wright was there, Secretary of Energy, and of course the port there in Corpus Christi is, I think, the second or third largest exporter of liquefied natural gas to the world. So it's an important part of the Texas economy, creates a lot of jobs, and is important for geopolitical reasons. I think the president wants to talk about domestic issues. He wants to talk about the working family tax cuts bill, which has a lot in there for, in terms of kitchen table issues, affordability issues. Unfortunately, sometimes world affairs like this intervene. But I think I'm hopeful that we'll get back to talking not just about what's happening over there, but what's happening right here.
So why do you want another 6 years in the U.S. Senate?
Two reasons. One is I enjoy the job, and I think I've gotten better at it. When the governor wanted Texas to be reimbursed for $11.1 billion for border security in Operation Lone Star that Texas did using Texas tax dollars that the federal government should have financed under the Biden administration, he called me and we worked together and we got it done. So I think I can still be effective for the people I've represented for a long time now. And secondly, I don't want to see the Republican Party destroyed. We haven't elected a statewide Democrat since 1994 in Texas. If the Attorney General is the nominee, that's all at risk, and that would be a crack in the red wall. And I think there's other opportunities for us to use the money that might otherwise be used to try to salvage an unelectable nominee in places like Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, and New Hampshire. And so that would be a huge opportunity cost. I know the president and his team understand that. He's chosen to stay out of the race until now. So we'll see whether he has the same attitude after March the 3rd, but certainly welcome his support.
I was going to say, if he had endorsed in this, wouldn't that have settled it by now?
Yeah, he says he's got 3 friends in the race. And, if you asked me to endorse you, let's say, in a contested Republican primary, I'd say, I'm going to be making at least half of my voters mad if I endorse a person in a contested Republican primary. So I generally do not do that. So I get it. I understand why he would want to stay out of it, at least until it's clarified on March the 3rd.
But you believe Ken Paxton could potentially
Lose the race.
The race and cost Republicans a big Senate seat.
No question. And it's not only important in terms of the Senate race, it's important in terms of what happens down ballot. I won by 10 points in 2020, so I actually helped the down ballot races. Since President Trump is not going to be on the ballot, it'll be the Senate race at the top, and then the congressional races, and then the state races. So if I'm on the top of the ballot and win by a significant margin, that'll help with the congressional seats. And I know that President Trump cares a lot about maintaining the majority in the House of Representatives in this midterm election. If Ken Paxton is the nominee, I think all of that is at risk, and not just the Senate race, but these down ballot races as well. So I don't know why we would want to take that risk.
And your other opponent, Wesley Hunt, as he reminded me the other day, he said, look, when John Cornyn began his public service as a judge, I was but 11 months old. This guy's been in public service too long. It's time for the next generation. To Republicans who agree with him or ponder that thought, what do you say?
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think either President Trump's either 79 or 80, and I don't hear any Republicans saying he's too old. I think it's, frankly, kind of insulting, but what else is Wesley going to say? He's not going to make it past March 3rd, and he is going to force a runoff. And I guess if that's what he counts as success, he will be successful. But he's not going to be the next senator from Texas. He's given up his House seat in order to do this and force us into a runoff. So,
And you see you and the Attorney General going into that runoff?
absolutely, yeah.
Okay. To the, well, answer me this. In 2026, what does it mean to be a Republican?
Well, I tell you, Republican primary voters want people who will support the president, which I've done. If you've seen some of my advertising, 99.3% of the time. And they want to know who's strong on border security. And I've been strong on border security, been endorsed by the National Border Patrol Council. Paul Perez was my guest at the president. It was my guest at the State of the Union. And so it's basically boils down to those things. So a lot of this, the campaign involves correcting or at least refuting misinformation or disinformation, or some people might even call it lies about my record. And but that's part of what a campaign is, and that's what we've done. And now it's going to be up to the folks who happen to show up at the polls on March the 3rd.
Does being a Republican, though, today require total loyalty to President Trump?
I think people want to see President Trump to be successful. Certainly he won the election in 2024, got a mandate, and so they want to see members of Congress that are support him and his policies. I can continue to help the president if I'm elected. If the Attorney General is the nominee and loses, obviously he can. If he forces us to lose these down-ballot congressional races, he risks further a Republican minority in the midterm, which means the president's agenda for his last 2 years in office is basically goes by the wayside. So I don't know why anybody would want to take that risk, and so that's why I'm running.
With all due respect, and just having talked to people here in the state and across the country looking in on this one, as you said, it's a bit of a kerfuffle, but here you are, a scandal-free, 99.3% aligned Republican who's put in decades of service to the state, and as you say, has brought home the bacon whenever it was needed. But you're stuck in this contest that many have thought he doesn't deserve that, or they shouldn't be having this fight. What did you not do, or what did you do to compel others to do this?
Well, I always say that the great thing about the Senate is you run every 6 years. The bad thing about the Senate is you run every 6 years. And people are busy and they have families to raise, kids to take to school, and jobs to do. So they're not thinking about the Senate race. And so that's a long period of time. You're also not in the press on a daily basis. If you're the Attorney General, which I was for 4 years before the Senate, you can get in the newspaper all you want. And particularly if your claim to fame is that you've filed, thousands of lawsuits and issued 2,000 press releases. So a lot of this is just trying to break through the chatter. And I'm confident of the outcome. I mean, this is not my first race. I know Republican voters. And as I said earlier, really it's a question of who bothers to show up. If only the most radical people show up in the primary, then I think that's going to be a challenge. If we get a broad spectrum of Republican voters to turn out in the primary, I'm optimistic about the outcome.
And given the early voting numbers for Democrats, you may have a real issue going into November.
No, I mean, you're right. The Democrat voting numbers are surpassing what Republicans are doing so far in the primary. There's a lot of energy behind Tallarico and Jasmine. I don't know who's going to win the race, but neither one of them, I think, are going to have general election appeal to Texas voters. They are, as I said a little bit earlier, they are running in the wrong state. This isn't California.
But we've seen statewide candidates in this state make the kind of sort of values-based argument that Tallarico is making, even if his politics are a little more to the left. That sort of packaging of his approach.
Oh, he's a smooth operator. and he's running a good campaign, and he's got it looks to me, a pretty good organization. But I don't think he's largely been contested. Some of the crazy things he said, God is not binary, you know, abortion is approved of in the Bible. I mean, he wears his sanctimonious cloak of a seminarian. But I think, you know, those issues will all be litigated in the general election. Jasmine has said, if I'm the nominee, she can't win. She said no Democrat can win. I don't know how she feels today about that, or if she's the nominee, but it ought to be a spirited contest.
Let me ask you one final one, because you know we're covering this basically for the 49 other states, in addition to viewers here in Texas. But given that there's going to be at least some attention this week on Texas, and then maybe in May and November, what do you think, after all your years of being in state government and being a leader of the state, is the biggest misperception about Texas?
About Texas? Well, some people still think we have you know, tumbleweed, you know, down the middle of Main Street, and we all ride horses. We do ride horses occasionally, but mainly in the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo Parade. But you know, Texas is a very diverse place, and it's not just people that look like me. What we call Anglos in Texas. Obviously, we have a huge Hispanic population. We have a huge, diverse group of people from around the world who've come here to make Texas their home and become assimilated into our culture. They're proud of being Texans. You go to the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo that I mentioned a moment ago, you see people from all sorts of backgrounds and races and ethnicities wearing cowboy hats. They're all cowboys and cowgirls for the week. So there's a lot of Texas pride. And, but I think, you know, and people are continuing to vote with their feet and move from other places where they don't really have the opportunities they have here. So I still think there's a little bit of jealousy and even envy of our state, and but that's okay with me.
And finally, you know, I was reminded by colleagues I was talking to, we're entering a midterm election year where we've seen a lot of different elements of society and public institutions sort of take it on the chin. The concerns about what happened, for example, in Minnesota, you know, issues with support of and approval of Congress. My business isn't doing that well in public standing, frankly. I mean, there are other elements of society as well. I had a whole list of them that I can't suddenly find.
Yeah, I think all our institutions are sort of in a little bit of trouble.
So what do you say to a voter who's like, I'm giving up on government, on our public leadership. There's no hope.
Well, that means you're giving up on America, and you're giving up on what is unique about our great country, the freedom and the opportunity that we enjoy. I think we take it for granted. That's why people still come here in droves, one way or the other, because they want what we have. And this idea that, oh, it's just too hard or too contentious, I'm going to check out or leave. Even some people have said that. I just think is just is moronic, if I can use that word. So the best thing to do is to be a part of the solution, because the unique thing about our country is we are self-governed. And if people don't participate in the elections, then that means they're abdicating to other people to govern the country in a way they may not like it. So the best way we can change things is for more people to participate in the process. You don't all have to run for office, but voting and supporting candidates who you believe in and who believe in the same values you do is the way we change things. And so I hope I hope people will take the more optimistic and longer view rather than the short-term view.
Senator, thank you for taking the time. We appreciate it.
You bet.
Safe travels the next few
Thank
days.
you. Appreciate it.
Goes to a runoff, we may come back and see you again.
It's going to.